American ghost towns are nothing out of the ordinary except for the haunted ones. Coming in at number 5 we have Goldfield, Arizona. Being deemed as one of Arizona's most haunted places, we have the town of Goldfield. Founded in 1893, Goldfield was a promising land for gold mining. The town grew rapidly, gaining 1,500 residents during its first year. The space was quick to build businesses including stores, a blacksmith, a butcher, a brewery, and 3 saloons. Though the town of Goldfield met its fall just as quickly as it was built up. After 5 short years, the gold ran out and people began to dwindle, eventually leaving it fully abandoned, securing its ghost town status. Being classified as a ghost town doesn't necessarily mean a place is haunted by ghosts, but this is not the case for the Goldfield ghost town. There's plenty of documentation and investigations that point to Goldfield being a paranormal active ground. It is known that a mysterious figure lurks within the shadows of the Goldfield ghost town, Bordello. It is unclear who this spirit would have been in life, yet it is commonly believed he was once a miner who lived in the town. Unexplainable knocks and bangs are heard in the building, and some unfortunate visitors have been scratched. This activity is attributed to a dark character who's usually seen wearing a cowboy hat. Just on the horizon of the Goldfield ghost town sits a landscape made ominous by its name and the legend surrounding it. The Superstition Mountains are cloaked in mystery and at the center of many fables, making them notorious among the paranormal community. The Superstition Mountains carry many secrets, the most famous being the location of a supposed deposit of gold and riches in the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. A curse has kept this treasure safe since the days of Goldfield's mining boom. Many have set out to locate these riches, and many have returned empty-handed or found only death. Countless adventurers have perished in the Arizona heat pursuing this chase. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the mountainside. Other secrets of the mountain have people believing that the hill is a place where evil spirits hid and told stories of a devil that lived behind the mountain. There's also a rumored apparition of a hugely tall skeleton named the Borrego Phantom, which appears to those exploring the mountain after dark. Another layer of creepiness is added to the mountain by the local legend that reptile-looking people surface there after dark. All of these creepy mysteries are summed up pretty nicely in the Superstition Mountain's name. In at number 4 we have Glenrio, New Mexico. Found on the state border of Texas and New Mexico lies the town of Glenrio. Founded in 1901, it was a town where wheat and cattle farmers settled and grew a community. Being divided between 2 states made for some unusual customs in Glenrio. The mail would arrive at a train depot on the Texas side, but would have to be transported to the post office on the New Mexico side. The Texas side was part of a dry county, so all the bars were on the New Mexico side. Because the gasoline tax was higher in New Mexico, all the service stations were on the Texas side. By 1920, Glenrio had a hotel, a hardware store, and a land office, as well as several grocery stores, service stations, and cafes. Though Glenrio's permanent population never rose above 30 people, the town survived with its tourist-based businesses catering to the many travelers along Route 66. By 1985, only 2 residents remained in the small town, and the Texas post office was the only business open. It too has long since closed. Other buildings have overgrown sites, missing windows, or debris surrounding them. The detritus of 4 decades when Glenrio welcomed tens of thousands, fed and entertained them, and sent them on their way towards Chicago or California. In at number 3 we have Nevada City in Montana. Miners settled in Nevada City in 1963, along with establishing their homes and businesses in this new town. Located in southwestern Montana, the town is 1.5 miles from Virginia City. The town was thriving up until 1876 when the gold miners moved to other promising sites. In 1896, the Connery Placer Mining Company destroyed most of the city's buildings. The company dredged the gulch and later abandoned it, leaving heavy wooden barges. This abandoned town being haunted is old news, as the Nevada City Hotel is reported to be frequented by the apparition of a road agent who lost their life nearby, according to online sources. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures standing behind their reflections in mirrors. Additionally, the spirit of an older cowboy figure who never speaks but lurks in the hotel rooms and even sits at the bar in the Virginia City. Back when the hotel operated, guests also complained of a weeping woman, always in the same room, only to be told there was no guest in the room in question.
Number 3. The Vanishing Village. Way up north, a village named after a bountiful, massive freshwater lake in Canada's Nunavut. 1932. a Canadian fur trapper and explorer, went to the village of Anjacuni Lake. The people's known there for their markets of elaborate fish and extensive wine. This village was a staple for most on the map. Joe LaBelle, a well-known fur trapper and well-known in the village, had an otherworldly sight when he arrived. He arrived and sensed something was a little wrong, a little too quiet, too foggy. He found that the village was completely emptied and deserted, even though there were lots of signs of life still present. Campfires blazing, pots still boiling, doors were even open, and food out waiting to be served. Thousands of Anjacuni villagers had simply vanished. He sent a telegraph to the closest RCMP office and told them about his account. And here's the scary part. They launched an official investigation which was never solved. They took a testimony from another trapper and his two sons who said they saw a large cylindrical object transform into a bullet shape before flying directly over Anjacuni Lake. At the village, the police found the kayaks were still on the beach, meals still in the early stages of rot, and apparently the headstones were even stacked neatly in piles on either side of the graves. Okay? To this day, there's no proper explanation for this mass disappearance of people and the hundreds of empty graves. Number 2, Skeleton Lake. Deep within the Himalayas of India lays the bay of an ancient lake, shrouded by an ancient mystery, Rupkund Lake, famously known as Skeleton Lake. It was rediscovered by the British Forest Rangers in 1942, and what they found was pretty jarring. Hundreds of ancient human skeletons found at the edge of the lake. Investigations led some to think that this was a catastrophe of some sort, or the remains of a legendary event where a group was suddenly killed in a violent storm around the 9th century. Nope! 3 different groups of people died here all at different times. It's not located on or near a trade route. No evidence of any ancient bacteria pathogen, ruling out diseases. Yeah, this one's really weird. One group of people had genetics to present-day South Asia, while the other group related to the people of Central Europe. And finally, a group particularly from the Greek island of Crete. But how? All here? They found the bones and deaths were genetically separated in time by as much as 1,000 years difference. Wooden artifacts, iron spearheads, even slippers and jewelry were found by the National Geographic team who studied 30 skeletons in 2003. Skin still on some of them. Ugh. 300 people have been found so far. Legend goes, Parvati, a supreme goddess, cursed the kingdom, unleashing drought and disaster upon them. She sent down a blizzard of hail and whirlwind which swept the people into the lake. Their skeletons are a warning to those who disrespect the goddess. I mean, maybe. The skeletons are visible in the clear water of the shallow lake during 1 month when the ice melts. That's terrifying. I'm gonna chicken out right now and just never visit this place. Just show up and get Jack Skellingtoned? Are you kidding me? No way, dude. And number 1, the City of Screams. Top of my relaxing trip list, Golgula City, Afghanistan. Peaceful once as it was the capital of the Gorid people, until Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire seized it in about the 12th century. Apparently legend goes its ruler, Jalaluddin Mangburnu, fought back and apparently killed Khan's grandson in battle. Yeah, probably not a good idea. In 1221, Khan sent his 15-year-old Mudu Khan here to claim and siege, who in turn was shot and killed with an arrow, precipitating the siege of Bamyan. At first, the city held strong, but was apparently sold out by the ruler's daughter, who, according to legend, betrayed the castle's secret entrance, sharing and consorting with the enemy. Expecting to be rewarded, her and her people were unfortunately slaughtered, and the ruins cursed, of course. The Russians, the Taliban, and the Americans have all used these ruins as fighting posts over the years, as this place hasn't been lived in since. But through them is apparently very haunted, the ruins subject to those who still hear the screams of the fallen. Yeah. Terrifying. Haunting sounds of screaming and warfare are echoed here, thus giving it its famous name of the City of Screams. Dark horseback figures to even full-on uniformed specters are seen atop the rubble. Yeah, I'd just say we just avoid this place completely and just kind of back away slowly out of respect, you know?
Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting into your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here. Waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do.
Coming in second place, we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, which was renamed to the Stay on Main in 2011. Cited as one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Hotel, its history includes multiple deaths by a single hand and more unexplainable horrors. The first documented end of life at the Cecil occurred on the evening of January 22nd, 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, age 52 at the time, shot himself in the head while inside his hotel room after spending over $40,000 in an attempt to woo back his estranged wife and an attempt to buy happiness. The next death that was reported was in 1931 when a guest, W.K. Norton, passed in his room after taking poison capsules. Too many lives to list were self-taken at the height of the Great Depression in the 40s and 50s. In 1947, it was claimed that Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, was spotted at the hotel days before her gruesome and unsolved end of time. On the topic of unsolved deaths, we move ahead to 1964 when a retired telemarketer named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, who had been a well-known long-term resident at the hotel, was found brutally ended in her room, with said room having been ransacked. In the 1980s, the hotel was home for a few weeks to repeated ender of lives Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. It's assumed that he engaged in most, if not all, of his killing spree while staying there, being convicted of 13 deaths total in 1989. A copycat of his, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil in 1991 and was responsible for the strangulation and death of at least 3 women of the night. The most recent death reported took place in 2013 when surveillance footage of Canadian student Elisa Lam behaving erratically in the hotel's elevator went viral. The video depicts Lam repeatedly pressing the elevator's buttons, walking in and out of the elevator, and was recorded shortly before her disappearance. After 19 days of being missing, her naked body body was discovered in a water supply cistern on the hotel roof, following complaints from guests of odd-tasting water and low pressure. And finally, in first place, we have the famed Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. It all began in 1881, when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband, William Winchester, of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company, passed away in quick succession, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, which would amount to roughly $561.6 million today, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, a combination of an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced her to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle, and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignafo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 16 times. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed. An entire wing was destroyed, along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes that were protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at this time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched.
Number 5. Chateau de Montsegur. A petite and quaint fortress in southern France, sitting atop a 170-meter drive uphill. Its ruins now nothing but rock and rubble, but once a safe house for the Cathars. The Cathar vision of the universe was dualist, in that good and light confronts evil and darkness. Right? Pretty straightforward. Very Jedi of them. This belief led them to follow a very disciplined way of life. Before, of course, they were decimated from the Catholic Church, initiated by Pope Innocent III. Innocent, huh? The ruins nicknamed now Satan's Synagogue. Yeah, nice and light right off the top, huh, Kyle? Described as one of the last Cathar castles, and has been listed as a monument historique by the French Ministry of Culture. Cathar, from Greek meaning pure. These people were devout. In 1233, the site became the seat and head of the Cathar Church. The fort roughly housed about 500 people during this time. In 1242, a military of about 10,000 troops fought against the castle that was held up by only 100 Cathars. So like very Jedi all of a sudden. The siege lasted 9 months. Until 2 years later, the castle finally surrendered. North of 200 Cathars were burned in a giant bonfire, unless they renounced and changed their faith, some taking the Cathar vow just weeks before this. Those who renounced the Cathar faith were allowed to leave, but the castle itself destroyed. The field below, now famously known to have been where hundreds of men and women were burned alive. The apparent bonfire that happened sparked a curse from the Cathar peoples. Legends of these ruins say any person who strays off the marked footpaths of these ruins and loses their footing will drop off of every side of the citadel in the sky. Sounds more like a metaphor to me than a curse. Number 4. Kalaupapa. In 1866, during the reign of Kamehameha V, Hawaiian officials passed a law designating this island the official site for patients affected with leprosy. Kalaupapa, a small peninsula in the north shore of Molokai, has quite a bitter and spooky history. The king exiled those who contracted Hansen's disease here, noting it was the ideal spot secluded and surrounded by the highest cliffs in the world. The peninsula served as a natural outdoor prison, accessible only by one steep path by foot or boat to shore. About 1,200 families were exiled to quarantine here. At the time, the disease wasn't really understood, believing it to be very incurable. whisked off and locked away amid paradise in total isolation. No amenities, no buildings, or even potable water. Known by historians who visit it as, quote, the pit of hell itself. And apparently the most cursed place on earth. Yeah, I didn't know that. With its grim history of loneliness, despair, and death, it's not really surprising at all that Kalaupapa is said to be one of the most haunted places in all of Hawaii. This island was basically a death sentence for those on it. Shackles, cages, caves. Sounds about right to be haunted by the afterlife.
In at number 2 we have Kuster, Idaho. The mining town of Kuster was born in 1879 by gold miners looking for their next gold hotspot. Prospectors discovered gold in what would become known as the Yankee Fork area of central Idaho in 1867. The area was worked on a small scale for more than a decade before the discovery of General Custer Mine. The General Custer Mining Company closed in 1888 and the district experienced a sharp decline. In 1899, the town of Kuster has 5 saloons, 3 stores, a hotel, and 3 boarding houses, but the town never established even one church. By 1910, most of the mines in the area were closed, and the Yankee Forks boom years came to an end. The combined population of Kuster and the nearby Bonanza was just 66 people. The Silver Messenger reports just 2 families remaining in Kuster in 1911, and then being fully abandoned the year following. Today it has been purchased by the US Forestry Service and, in conjunction with the Friends of Kuster Society, is slowly being made into a historic site. Some original buildings have already been renovated, some are in process, and many others are slated to be restored. Several buildings lost in a 1960s grass fire are due to be replaced with replicas. The Forgotten Town is a landmark for many people such as tourists and especially paranormal investigators. In the old schoolhouse is a museum containing items left behind and showcases the town's unique history. Although interesting, you can't help but get an eerie feeling thinking about the people who once owned these items, as walking into one of these structures is like walking back in time. To think this town was once active with human energy and miners working every single day. And finally, in at number 1 we have South Pass City, Wyoming. Only about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail is the shell of a town that used to be a busy gold mining camp. Established in a small valley along the banks of Willow Creek, the town was born in 1867. The town was built there because gold was discovered in the Wind River Mountains. By 1868, South Pass City boasted over 250 buildings, 1,000 people, and hundreds of claims. The town was extremely busy as its half-a-mile-long main street boasted numerous hotels, restaurants, general stores, 2 newspapers, doctors, a bowling alley, and dozens of saloons. The mining district continued to grow to as many as 3,000 residents. Miners looking for investors and newspapers promoting further settlement in the area exaggerated the region's amount of gold. But for South Pass City, its great success wouldn't last, and just 2 years after its establishment would begin to show its first signs of declining. Hitting a fall in early 1869, the town resurged briefly after outsider capital was poured into the area, but would fall again as expenses and hardships to recover the gold proved too costly for most miners. By 1872, the town was only occupied by only a few hundred people. In the end, South Pass would become a permanent ghost town. By 1949, the last of the pioneer families had moved on from South Pass City, and the buildings had fallen into disrepair. The grounds of the old town are known to be haunted, and Highway 287 that follows the route of the Oregon Trail over South Pass, which is the reason South Pass City ever existed, has had its fair share of ghost sightings. According to a local ghost story, a woman was driving home from a long day in Denver. Her friend had fallen asleep in the passenger seat. After passing through Jeffrey City, the driver spotted a dark, hunched figure walking toward the road in the sagebrush. About a half-mile later, she saw the same figure closer to the road. She noted his pig coat as he became clearer. About a half-mile later, still thinking about this man and his surprising reappearance, she reached over to wake her friend and request she take a turn driving. As her friend awoke, she saw the same man at the edge of the road, just crossing the white line onto the highway next to the car. Screaming, they accelerated away and compared descriptions. It was certainly the same man.
In 5th place, we have Preston Castle, also known as the Preston School of Industry in Ione. Opening in 1894 and named after state senator at the time, Edward Myers Prestonas, it was presented as an alternative to juvie, a place to send troubled boys to learn a new trade and avoid incarceration. To the general public, it quickly became known as the best reform school of its kind, where boys could grow their own food, raise livestock, learn farming trades and skills for self-preservation in the real world. Known as wards, minors under guardianship of the state, but not necessarily juvenile offenders, many boys passed from severe illnesses like tuberculosis or were simply killed by guards for reasons unknown. Records show that the initiation to the facility involved swimming through a pool filled with lye, and common discipline methods included starvation, isolation, public paddling, and lashings. A mass grave on the property contains at least 23 bodies of wards that were sent to be rehabilitated. Head housekeeper of the facility, Anna Corbin, was brutally beaten to death on February 23rd of 1950. Various students and members of the staff were suspects in her passing, but it remains unsolved. Visitors to the now landmark have reported meeting her spirit, which roams around the grounds with all the students that couldn't pass over. Physical representations of spirits at this location have included multiple slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched by a cold hand. All common pranks that are meant to terrorize and discombobulate. In fourth place, we have the Los Coches Adobe in Soledad. Before the establishment even broke ground, back when the area was used primarily for mining, over 30 miners perished in a soil collapse, and visitors to the area have since reported hearing their cries for help from the now abandoned mine shaft, while feeling pressure on their chest and back as if they were being buried alive. The adobe itself is located on the site of Highway 101. The building being originally built in 1843 to be used as lodging for workers in the area. Between 1872 and 1886, Soledad served as the terminal station for the railway that connected to San Francisco. Legend says that the owner of the inn was responsible for ending the lives of multiple folks who stayed there, especially near the end of the inn being in use, by entering the rooms as they slept and slitting their throats before stealing their riches in an attempt to keep the inn, well, afloat. Other spirits spotted on the property include, but are not limited to, a man hanging from a tree, swaying in the wind, and a woman sitting while holding a pointer stick, with her mouth moving as if she's yelling at whoever spots her. It is reported that the wall between the living and the dead is so thin here that people who have stayed in recent history reported having the walls and surroundings inside of the building changed them to match the settings of the once deadly inn before their very eyes. Those who have opted to go so far as to stay the night have often woken up with handprints on their chest or throat, a remnant of what came before. In third place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. Formerly a genuine gold mining town located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, Body, and then a few other phonetic variations, to eventually become B-O-D-I-E after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. You know, an accidental typo that stuck through history. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. A particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 1879 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from fallen timber and explosions underground. Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness, and unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and yet another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking way too many lives too soon in the process. When the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. According to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Nowadays, Bodie may be a tourist destination, but if you remove anything from the land, even so little as a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Bodie for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past, who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures.
Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits, was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I
In at number 5 we have Batsto Village in New Jersey. Located in New Jersey, Batsto Village is a historic community centered around the Batsto Iron Works. The site was ideal for ironwork because there was water for mills, abundant wood for charcoal, and naturally occurring bog iron. The well-preserved and lovingly restored village dates back to 1766. As the operation of ironwork grew, so did the village. There were mills, cottages, and over 3 dozen structures and buildings still remain, many from the early 1800s. But by mid-1800s, iron production declined due to the discovery of coal ore. As the need for iron declined, then glassmaking was pursued by the town, but at that point the population already started to dwindle. When Joseph Wharton purchased the property, he primarily focused on forestry and agricultural endeavors. After Joseph Wharton passed in 1909, the property was managed by a trust. The state of New Jersey began buying the land in the 1950s. The last resident to leave the town left in 1936, but not before strange disappearances occurred. According to local legend and a bunch of conspiracy theorists, Ong's Hat offers a portal to a different dimension. In the 1970s, a few professors from Princeton fled there after being mocked by their quantum physics theories. This is when they claimed to have discovered interdimensional travel. According to other local legends, the devil is the 13th born son of the Leeds, the first inhabitants of New Jersey. Mother Leeds gave birth to a healthy baby, who within minutes transformed into this beast. This old ghost town is said to be a hotspot for the Jersey Devil activity, and in the last 50 years there have been numerous reports and encounters with the beast in this area. Some of these encounters include strange tracks along with hearing screams just outside of the village. One sighting of the Jersey Devil comes from a group that saw the creatures crossing the street in front of them. When visiting the village, some say you can feel his presence as if he's walking right behind you. In at number 4 we have Bodie, California. Located up in the Bodie Hills in Mono County, California, near Yosemite, in 1859 4 miners found a good place to look for gold in the hills near the California-Nevada border. Bodie died in a blizzard not long after, but a small mining town sprung up at their camp. The town was home to 10,000 people. Bodie was a mining camp in 1859 where people had seen gold in its hills. Eventually it turned into a well-populated town, though like most mining towns it saw its peaks, its losses, and then its decline. Fast forward to 1962 and the town would be fully abandoned. Although it already showed signs of decline with dwindling numbers at the start of the 20th century, a series of fires forced the last remaining residents to flee the town, leaving it almost exactly as it was in the early 1900s. With the dinner tables still set, shops are still stocked with supplies, and restaurants are still poised to serve long-forgotten meals. Today, the 110 silent buildings sit spaced out for traffic and people that aren't there. Buildings such as a barbershop, a church, a mill, a morgue, and a leaning hotel are held up by a beam and have been left untouched for 100 years. Though it has been left abandoned for years, some of the buildings are in a crumbling state of decay, while others stand strong, full of their original items but long devoid of their owners. There were also 60 saloons and thus a fair amount of danger. People were robbed and crimes occurred quite often, though the curse of Bodie has nothing to do with the fires or the shootings. It started because people started taking artifacts from abandoned buildings. They'd take weather-worn shoes or pieces of glass from shattered windows. Somebody once ran off with a piano. Those items may seem like they have no value, but all objects carry equal significance in telling the story of Bodie. Thus the curse of Bodie emerged: if you take something from Bodie, bad luck will come around to get you. Because of the rumor spreading of a curse, people who stole items would send them back, often including heartfelt apology letters, explaining that they didn't expect their fish to pass or their romantic life to fail from stealing from Bodie. In at number 3 we have Terlingua in Texas. The town of Terlingua, Texas was once a bustling mining town full of life, wealth, and promise. Today it's a ghost town with abandoned mine shafts, a general store, an old jail, a church, and multiple ghost houses. Terlingua became of interest to local miners in the late 1800s when they discovered cinnabar, a red mercury sulfide. A man by the name of Jack Dawson discovered that mercury could be extracted from the cinnabar, and by 1900 there were 4 mining companies in the area with a population of over 2,000 people. The Chisos Mining Company owned the entire town of Terlingua, and at one point they built a general store, a post office, a hotel, a school, a theatre, and even a telephone service. Though conditions in the mine were tough, with the 7-day work week being the standard, working long days in the desert heat led many miners to lose their lives in the mines. To make matters worse, the Chisos Mining Company even paid their workers in coupons, which could only be spent at the company-owned store. The decline started once the mines dried up. Companies left and the people left with them. One of the scariest parts of the town is the church, which sits on the hill above the ghost town. One quote says, "As we approached the church, the door opened all by itself. Inside the church, visitors report an eerie feeling when entering the church. Moreover, several others report experiencing blackouts, blurred vision, and even hallucinations while exploring the abandoned town." Researchers theorize that this is due to low-frequency sound waves in the area that are able to alter people's perceptions of the things around them, and as well as disorient them. In at number 2 we have Ludlow, Colorado. Located about 12 miles north of Trinidad, Ludlow, Colorado is a ghost town known for an infamous event in 1914. A former mining camp, it was the location of the Ludlow Massacre. Beginning in 1910, the resident coal miners grew unhappy over their dangerous working conditions and began to debate a strike. By 1913, a strike had begun, much to the dismay of owner John B. Rockefeller. On April 20th, 1914, there was a massacre in Ludlow, where the Colorado National Guard and Colorado Fuel and Iron Company guards attacked miners, burning their tents to the ground. Known as the Ludlow Massacre, 25 people lost their lives. The massacre was the height of the Colorado Coalfield War, which began a year earlier in 1913. Two coal mining counties, Las Animas and Huerfano, were the centers of the conflict. The United Mine Workers of America led the strike against the Colorado Fuel and Iron, owned by Rockefeller. They were upset over the horrible working conditions. Both parties led attacks back and forth over the years. Today, the old company town of Ludlow still stands as a ghost town, and the site of the tent city is also kept reserved, now under the care of the United Mine Workers of America. A monument to the deceased was also built by the Union at the site. In addition, the cellar where so many innocents perished is still in place. The doorway can still be seen and the dark depths of the pit can still be viewed. Though this isn't recommended, as many people who visit the abandoned ghost town report a strange feeling when looking through the doorway, and even worse, possible whispers around them with an unexplainable source. And finally, in at number 1 we have Helltown, Ohio. The abandoned town known as Helltown can be found in the Cuyahoga Valley in Ohio. Thus, it's an eerie, deserted town known by locals to be haunted. No people live in the area anymore, though there are still remnants of the lives of former residents left behind. The whole town is surrounded by hazardous roads that seemingly lead to nowhere. Locals believe this was done to confuse any wandering explorers. But the Helltown Church seems to have inspired the town's ominous name. The tiny white church is in the center of Helltown and is central to all local theories. Some say the church was a place of worship for practicing Satanists who still lurk around the closed-off roads, hoping to recruit unwelcome visitors. Others believe the town was evacuated after a chemical spill that resulted in bizarre mutations of the residents and animal population. The legend of the Peninsula Python stems from this theory. There even sits an abandoned school bus in the town with legends of its own. The story goes that the bus was carrying a group of high school students who were going to one of the ski resorts near Boston when an elderly woman flagged down the bus. She was in a panicked state and explained that there was a young boy in her house who was seriously hurt. The bus driver, in an attempt to help, turned down her driveway and drove into the woods hoping to help the boy. When the bus approached the house, Satan worshippers swarmed it and sacrificed all those on board. The bus sat back there for over 30 years, standing as a warning to all who decide to venture into Helltown. A local paranormal investigator set out to research the abandoned town, and to his surprise, what he discovered was truly frightening. He describes Helltown as not just truly abandoned, but is home to many spirits and hauntings. His personal experience with a ghost encounter was returning to his car to find strange people looking into his car windows. Both times the people vanished as soon as they saw him approaching the car before he had a chance to speak to them.
Number 5 on this list is Pink Place Market. This would be a really nice place to do your shopping if it wasn't so freaking haunted. Mental Floss says, as one of the most famous public markets in the country, Pike Place Market is known for a lot of things. Fresh coffee, fresher fish, and paranormal activity. The Seattle Times reported on a number of figures who supposedly walk through walls or vanish into thin air. One older gentleman named Frank apparently likes to introduce himself to the living outside of a restaurant at the Alibi Room. Various other spirits also have names, like Princess Angeline, Madame Nora, and the Fat Lady Barber. At one point in the early 1900s, one section of the market was home to a mortuary. Currently operating in the basement of that space is Kel's Irish Restaurant and Pub. Its manager, Patrick McAlee, families recalled some eerie instances to the Times, such as a wall mirror inexplicably shattering, only to have the shards fall into a neat pile. You think someone must be pulling your leg, he said, but then you don't see anyone. So it seems that we have a full-on team of ghosts here. A small village of characters who are all moving around this mall marketplace in Seattle. Because there are so many of these paranormal entities, it makes it extremely difficult for anyone to get any shopping done without having some type of ghostly interference. You can't seem to get a good coffee here without a strong side of haunting along with it. There have been multiple attempts to rid the area of ghosts, but it just simply won't do. No matter how many experts are brought in here to cleanse the area or to put these spirits at rest, they continue to terrorize the people here, which is really too bad because from what I've heard, they have some really nice shops in here. Number 4 on this list is COS. So this is a big store in New York that has quite the haunted and terrifying history to it. Mental Floss says, New Yorkers can brush elbows with a ghost while doing some light shopping in Soho. The legend dates back to 1799 when Gulielma Elmore Sands tried to elope with her fellow boarding house tenant Levi Weeks. 11 days later, her body was found at the bottom of the well in Lispenard's Meadows, which is now 129 Spring Street. Since 2014, it's been the site of a COS retail store. Levi was arrested, tried, and acquitted in the first major murder trial in America that was fully recorded by a court stenographer. His attorneys, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But Sands Ghosts is said to roam the area, a warning to other girls who might try to run off with their lovers. Curious shoppers can still see the well in COS. Just head to the back of the men's department in the basement. Okay, so I have a few questions with this one. Why, after someone was literally murdered here, do we still have this death well in this store? And also, what is a well doing in a store in the first place? Like, I get that it was the 1800s or whatever, but like, we just kept that thing as time went on. Someone literally died in that thing, and now people are wondering why there are ghosts around this place. Like, no wonder Sands Ghosts is still chilling in this area. Even she is probably wondering why this well is still here. Also, can I just make a comment about ghosts in general? I get that they want to warn us about stuff and all of that, but like, why can't they just leave us a nice note or, I don't know, sit down and have a conversation? Why do they need to freak the hell out of people and just leave people confused as to what they want? Anyways, this place is going to remain haunted for a while until someone deals with that well. I'd conduct your shopping elsewhere if I was you. Number 3 on this list is the CherryVale Mall. This is just a mall that for whatever reason has decided that it wants to be haunted. Mental Floss says, since its opening in 1973, the CherryVale Mall in Rockford, Illinois has been the site of some spooky vibes. The Rock River Times noted that mall employees reported feeling watched or followed after the venue closed at night. Others have reported that certain stores would be a mess in the morning with clothing scattered or displays knocked over, even if the space was cleaned before being locked up. And on an even more unsettling note, some even claimed that bathroom doors were held shut by an unknown force. So basically, for no good reason, this mall is just haunted now. Now it's either that or this mall is just regularly hit with burglary. Maybe the things are moved because people have been stealing stuff and then just don't put everything back the way that they found it when they first got there. Or, and this one's a long shot, but some people are just pranking the hell out of this mall and creating the legend of a haunting here for some reason. Like a Scooby-Doo-esque vibe where they're really trying to do something else at the mall and need people to leave it alone because they're scared. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some reason why this mall would be haunted because there really isn't a good one. Comment down below if you guys know what could be causing this mall to be the way that it is. Number 2 on this list is the Diamond Center. The Diamond Center is located in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's very haunted. Alaska doesn't have that many people that live there. It's the largest state in America, and yet it has less than 1 million residents, which just makes what they did with this mall so much more disrespectful. A golden rule of thumb is do not not build big stuff on top of ancient Native American burial sites? Well, guess what? They built the Diamond Mall on an ancient burial ground of Native Alaskans. Sure enough, what happens when you do that? Well, some pretty bad things. This mall is almost impossible to shop in now because of this, and honestly, rightfully so. You should never be building stuff on this land to begin with, but just think about how big Alaska is and how few people live there. Like, guys, we couldn't have just moved the mall a kilometer that way and built it over there? I mean, I think that you have the space for it considering you're freaking Alaska. Ghosts and spirits run rampant here, and many visitors and employees have had harrowing experiences with them. Some have even reported being attacked by these spirits and been told that they have to leave. Sadly, these people don't control what the mall does, and now that it's been put down, the wealthy people who own it, they don't seem to care about these ghostly appearances. And finally, number 1 on this list is Toys R Us. So I know that Toys R Us isn't necessarily a mall, but to a kid it certainly is, and let me tell you, if you're a child, then do not go to this specific Toys R Us. The one that I'm talking about is located in Sunnyvale, California, and it's very haunted. Mental Floss says, a haunted toy store sounds like a solid horror movie plot, but it's rumored to be a reality in Sunnyvale, California. According to Stranger Dimensions, the legend goes as such. The store was built on property that was formerly a plantation. The plantation's owner, Martin Murphy, hired a preacher named Johnny Johnson. Crazy Johnny, as the preacher was nicknamed, was in love with Murphy's daughter, Elizabeth. Unfortunately, Elizabeth was planning on marrying a lawyer, and as the story has it, Johnny was angrily chopping wood one day and fatally wounded himself by accident. His ghost reportedly wanders the land, now home to the Toys R Us, looking for Elizabeth. The usual objects coming off the shelves and footsteps have been reported, but the best anecdote was of employees once hearing a voice whisper, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," over the intercom system. Imagine hearing that over the intercom. How on earth could you ever show up to your work the next day? Like, that's it, guys. I am done. I am fully out of there if that's what's coming on over the intercom. I also want to know, what is this ghost referencing? What is he planning on giving, or what's he planning on taking away? Unless he really is just citing the Lord and saying that. Toy stores are supposed to be ghost-free. There isn't supposed to be some haunted menace terrorizing the people who come and work here. That isn't the case at the Sunnyvale Toys R Us. And that's why I'd be buying my toys elsewhere if I was you.
For centuries, historians who investigated Jamestown had to rely on written accounts from the time in later historical documentation. For example, the legend of Pocahontas and John Smith was wildly romanticized through a white male Anglo-Saxon prism. Jamestown was a powerful symbolic legend, first of a new world claimed for the English Empire, then later the birth of a new nation. There was a strong motivation to enhance the legend with colonialist, patriotic, and religious fervor. But recent research, archaeological findings, and scientific documentaries have revealed shocking details and grim, actually horrific, realities of settlement life and death. Could it be possible that a foundation settlement of the American nation was rife with intrigue that included crypto-Catholicism in an anti-Catholic settlement, starvation, assassination attempts, and even killing and people-eating? Well, archaeological findings seem to indicate exactly that. Recent digs that started about 20 years ago at Jamestown have revealed shocking facts about life there. So archaeologists unearthed something stunning in structure number 191, which contained a brick and mortar oven of a kitchen. First, they found skeletal remains of dogs, cats, rats, and even a horse in the kitchen area. But then they found something even more shocking. The mutilated skull and severed leg of an English girl dating from about 1609. The skull and tibia bone both had numerous cutting and sawing marks on them, indicating that the body had been butchered. In addition, the back of the skull was smashed open, indicating that the skull had been bludgeoned, presumably to get at the brains, which are high in protein and eaten customarily from other butchered animals by the colonialists. The winter of 1609 was known as the starving time at Jamestown, and this was from a number of written accounts. During that time, of the about 600 total folks, only 60 people survived. Immediately next to the skull, a pottery bowl was also unearthed, indicating that all this was done at that kitchen. In fact, colonists could not have picked a worse time to try and settle in Virginia. Cores drilled from centuries-old trees near Jamestown by the archaeology team show that it was in the middle of a 7-year drought. The previous winter had been nearly as bad, and a lot of settlers had died of starvation. So it was during this time that John Smith ventured out in search of locals willing to provide the colonists with food. When he returned, he found that about 75% of the folks that had landed already starved to death. Desperate, a lot of folks decided to try to sail back to England on the small British ship, the Discovery, but Smith, trying to keep the colony afloat, aimed one of the fort's cannons at said ship and actually killed some of the defectors. In one of America's first trials by jury, Smith was condemned to the rope necklace, and by some accounts, he even had the rope there when Captain Newport sailed into the harbor with new settlers and stopped the whole end of life thing. Apparently, if you're visiting Colorado City, Arizona as just a random tourist, you're going to be followed by several white SUVs. Folks have reported getting a weird vibe driving through and seeing all these half-built compounds and people just staring at you creepily as you drive by. Well, I was checking the Wikipedia page. Turns out it's basically run by a cult. At least 3 Mormon fundamental sects are said to have been based in this area. A majority of the residents and many local officials belong to the most prominent of these groups, the Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, whose corporation also owned much of the land within and around the town until state intervention in the 2000s. Direct quote, folks. A sect of Mormonism that broke off from the main church because they were excommunicated for refusing to renounce polygamy, because apparently the mainstream Mormons abandoned the practice. And they do a lot of horrible stuff. Men are not allowed to have intercourse with their wives, and the only people allowed to do so are seed bearers who essentially attack women. People have been kicked out and made homeless for simply disagreeing with the church leader. These folks have been accused of some really bad crimes we can't talk about, both in the US and in Canada. In January of 2004, local leader Warren Jeffs expelled a group of 20 men, including the mayor, and gave their wives and descendants to other men. Jeffs, now a convicted predator, stated he was acting on the orders of God, while the men expelled claimed they were being penalized for disagreeing with him. He was eventually placed on the FBI most wanted list, like the top 10, and arrested on August 28th of 2006. Most of the property in the town was owned by the United Effort Plan, a real estate trust of the FLDS, for short. In 2007, the state authorities began dismantling church ownership of the land, and the church retaliated and indoctrinated their followers against the state, believing they were being targeted because of their beliefs. So the followers became further and further secluded as a result. Remaining members refused to believe the charges against Jeffs, by the way. On April 6th of 2010, law enforcement officials in a nearby county of Arizona and Washington County of Utah served 5 search warrants seeking records from town officers. And these warrants were served on government officials and departments, including the town manager, as well as the only fire chief, which, yikes. As a result of the initial warrants, the Department of Public Safety was shut down, and emergency responders were prohibited from responding to calls without the approval of county officials. That's a big deal. On March 20th of 2014, a jury heard a local case that ruled that the towns of Colorado City and local other cities had discriminated against locals Ronald and Ginger Cook because they weren't members of the FLDS church. They just moved there. So these folks were awarded $5.2 million for religious discrimination. They'd moved to the area in 2008, but refused access to the utilities of the town because, well, they weren't part of the FLDS. After all that, how about a more simple ghost story to cleanse the palate? One from Arkansas. So back in 1931, a railroad worker named Lewis McBride allegedly killed his supervisor from the Missouri Pacific Railroad. The foreman had fired McBride for an infraction, and some claim that McBride had intentionally manipulated a piece of track to cause a train crash. Seeking revenge for being fired, McBride killed his former boss by bludgeoning him with a railroad spike. Authorities arrested him, and he went the way of electrocution. So not long after McBride's death, a mysterious moving light began appearing along the train tracks, far from the highway. People have witnessed it many times since, and even the TV show Unsolved Mysteries documented the phenomenon. Experts say that according to documentation in the local paper, which didn't give a date, but it was somewhere in 1932, there was a lot of reports of people seeing a light on the track. The story was that when they found one person, he had a lantern in his hand, and yeah, he got chased, and that was the end of his life. So the light, nowadays seen only at night, has been described as either a yellow, red, blue, or white glowing light. You would see this tiny light, said Bob Thompson, the local Historic Association president. What we saw was kind of a reddish golden light. Looked like someone had a baseball cap with a flashlight in it. Now Thompson said most of the time they would see the light and then would later vanish, but some folks have had more aggressive encounters. So what will scare you though is when it gets the size of a baseball cap, and sometimes you can see it swinging. Now it's not just coming at you, it's moving, and then it disappears. So you say, well, I did that, fine, let's go back to the car. so you turn around and it's behind you, and that's when you get scared. It's always in a place when there is no electricity around. It shows when it chooses to show up, and when it chooses for you to see it, you see it. Though there are some scientific theories to explain the occurrence, a lot of local legends attribute the light to the ghost of McBride, or of that of a different rail worker who lost their head in an accident and allegedly continues to search for his head. The tropical waters around Bermuda may feel like the opposite of Alaska's frigid wilderness, but both places have something in common: unexplained disappearances. Thousands of tourists, residents, hikers, and airplanes have vanished without a trace in a large area of land called the Alaskan Triangle, encompassed by Juneau, Barrow, and Anchorage. So in 2007, state troopers reported about 2,833 disappearances. For a state with a population of more than 700,000 people, this suggests about 1 in a couple hundred people disappeared, which that's a lot of people. So yes, there are many theories about this creepy phenomenon, some of which involve Alaska's unpredictable and often unforgiving environment, as well as, the sheer expanse of the landscape that can result in many lost travelers. According to local legends, the missing people likely fell victim to the Kuster, a race of shape-shifting otter people who lure humans away from civilization and transform their captives into one of them. And finally for today, let's talk about something interesting in history. Allegedly, parts of the incident that led to the US intervention in Vietnam never happened. After evading a torpedo attack, the USS Maddox reportedly engaged 3 North Vietnamese boats in the Gulf of Tonkin on both August 2nd and August 4th of 1964, according to the Pentagon Papers. Although without US casualties, the events prompted Congress to pass a resolution allowing the president to intervene in the country. So talk of this status as a false flag for the US involvement in the Vietnam War has permeated public discourse almost since the time of the attacks, especially after the government admitted that the second incident involved false radar images. But after resisting comment for decades, the NSA finally declassified documents in 2005, admitting the incident on August 4th never happened. Those involved didn't necessarily intend to cover up the incident to propagate a war, but the evidence does suggest an active effort to make it fit the claim of what happened, according to historians. In fifth, we have the Most Holy Trinity Church in New York, built sometime between 1882 and 1885 on land that previously served as a graveyard until 1853. According to local rumors, not all of the bodies residing there were exhumed from the graveyard, and the spirits of those left behind still inhabit the grounds to this day. The church property covers an entire city block, and it is said that there are false closets leading to bricked-up doorways, tunnels, and random sub-basements throughout the church and convent. There are also mysterious passageways on the upper levels of the church, where legend says only priests are able to enter. The church's rectory was built in 1872 by its second pastor, Monsignor Michael May, who later passed in his room on the second floor. Priests who live in the rectory have used that space for mainly a guest room ever since, as no one has ever been willing to live in it on an ongoing basis. Guests have experienced lights being switched off and on, hearing strange noises, and the sound of a person walking back and forth while trying to sleep. Phantom footsteps have also been heard on the staircases in the building, and dogs who were once kept as pets in the rectory would stare in a trance-like state down the basement stairs, as well as into the dining room when the building got cold. In 1897, a parish bell ringer named George Stell's life was taken in the vestibule of the church. Though there was a suspect in the case, a former parishioner who would later be executed for an unrelated ending of life, no one was ever convicted of the crime. The red fluids of Mr. Stell's, as well as the red handprint of the killer, is believed to still be on the wall in a stairway leading to the bell tower. George's ghost still roams the church and is believed to be the reason why the bells will ring suddenly, vowing not to leave until his death has been solved. Moving on to our fourth place position, we have the Aquia Church of Stafford, Virginia. While the congregation was established in 1711, the physical parish wasn't built until 1751. It was a gorgeous brick building built on a peaceful hilltop with a 2-story crucifix floor plan, which otherwise known as a cruciform, which was considered a rather unusual style for colonial churches. Aquia was built to replace 2 earlier sites of the Overwharton parish, which were constructed around 1680. The inside of the church burned down in 1754 and was not rebuilt until 1757. It was then shut down from the Revolutionary War until the Civil War due to lack of funding, before reopening as a stable, campsite, and hospital for Union forces. It was during this closure that a young blonde woman was traveling the dark country roads, rural Stafford County, when a group of highwaymen accosted her. This time period was full of exasperated uncertainty from the war, and with it a severe lack of resources, food, and money. Men would wait hidden on the side of roads to steal the valuables from people walking or riding by their hiding spots. She ran from the men to the sanctuary of the church, but was only able to hide for a little while before they broke inside and ended her life. Her body was hidden in the tower, and the men were never caught. It wasn't until after the Revolutionary War ended in 1775 and the church was ready to reopen for services that what was left of her was discovered. A skeleton with golden blonde hair that was as intact as if she had been freshly slain. The red fluid that spilled on the floor from her death was impossible to remove. Despite using every trick known to man, the stains remained in the tower for well over 100 years, until during a modern renovation when the redness was covered up by concrete. With the facility still being in use today, members of the church have mentioned hearing footsteps walking around at all hours of the day and will break into a frantic run around the church at night, but no one is there. Noises can be heard in the empty tower, with some saying it sounds like a struggle, others describing a groan, whistle, or even a call for help. Many have also mentioned seeing a transparent woman in the church's windows, on the balcony, or even in the graveyard, dubbing her Blonde Beth after the hair of the skeleton. In the 1900s, brave people would try to stay overnight at the church, but were chased away by what they described as an unfriendly presence. A custodian working in the graveyard saw a ghostly woman's face floating above the graves, while another man saw a woman smiling at him through the balcony windows before she vanished. In the middle of this creepy sandwich, in third place, we're taking a closer look at St. Mary the Virgin, located on the outskirts of Clophill, England. Originally built facing the west sometime around the year 1350, it's believed to have been erected on top of a leper hospital run by monks. I'd like to take a moment to note that it was built in the quote-unquote wrong direction, with churches traditionally facing east, the direction from which the sun rises, which is associated with the location of heaven and the return of the Messiah in Christian religion. Altars inside of these holy buildings would face in the eastbound direction for prayers. Some have claimed that because St. Mary the Virgin faces away from God, it thus opens its doors to hell, and ergo responsible for the tale I'm about to tell. The building was abandoned in 1848 when the rector at the time made the decision to have a new church built, instead of expanding the previous one, which was much needed due to the rapidly growing congregation. Old St. Mary's, as was dubbed by the locals, was then primarily used as a mortuary chapel, holding bodies before they were buried in the adjacent cemetery. By the 1950s, St. Mary's had become so run down that it could no longer fulfill that use, with just the outdoor walls and tower remaining. In March 1963, the tomb of an 18th century apothecary's wife was broken into, and the bones were arranged ritualistically in the middle of the church. And once again on Midsummer's Eve of 1969, multiple women's graves were broken into, with bones being removed and rearranged once more. While the specific individuals involved in these acts were never identified, the arrangements found resembled those used in black mass rituals performed by satanic groups at the time. After the first incident in 1963, a rare decision was made to rehollow, or in more simple terms, re-bless the altar that was left in the building, in a failed attempt to protect the building from evil. Later that year, Reverend Harold Colthurst reported stumbling upon a group of men in the building that were in the midst of a mysterious ritual, being quoted as saying that the men were trying to communicate with evil spirits, chanting some sort of mumbo-jumbo. They were definitely in league with the devil. Modern-day visitors to the now landmark have reported seeing a plethora of ghostly figures during the day and nighttime, faint lights moving about before vanishing mysteriously, along with reports of a chilly and oppressive atmosphere even during warm days. In second place, we're visiting l'Abbaye de Mortimer, or Mortimer Abbey. It was originally built in 1134 on land gifted by King Henry I. The stagnant water of the drainage lake, which was dug out by the monks to dry up the marshy land, was called Mortimer, or the Dead Pond, giving the monastery its name. Totally not ominous or anything. The monks constructed what was then one of the largest monasteries in the world on said land. The legend says that after the passing of his only son, King Henry wanted to reform his daughter Matilda and had her locked in a room in the abbey for 5 years. The anger and hate she felt from being sent away and isolated stained and seeped into the walls of the monastery, cursing it for eternity. After her eventual release, she went on to live until 1167, when it said her spirit returned to Mortimer Abbey to haunt the area as the White Lady. She is said to appear on nights close to a full moon, moaning as she drifts through the now ruins of the monastery. Those that have seen her report that she alternates between wearing black and white gloves. If she appears to you with white gloves on, you're destined for good luck. But if she appears with black, you'll be expected to pass within a year. Alas, Matilda is not the only spirit one must worry about if visiting the abbey. When the monastery was at its peak in the 1500s, a frail and suffering woman was brought to the monks with an illness it was believed that only they could aid. It was revealed that she was possessed by the spirit of a wolf and cursed to become a werewolf for several nights. The monks chained her to a room and conducted multiple exorcisms in an attempt to eradicate the spirit. The monks were able to exorcise the evil wolf spirit or demonic force out of the woman, but it then attached itself to the grounds and walls of the monastery. Several hundred years later, in 1884, a man named Roger Saboureau was hunting in the woods nearby when he was attacked by a large werewolf. He shot it multiple times, killing the creature, but when he returned home at dawn, he found the body of his wife bearing wounds matching those he had given the wolf. People say the spirit of Roger's wife and his own heartbroken spirit still wander the area when the moon is full. The abbey was exorcised by the church in 1921, but still remains haunted to this day. And coming in first place, we have the Abbey of the Black Hag, locally known as Monasterngalagduff. Please don't curse me for my pronunciation, St. Catherine's Abbey, or simply as Old Abbey. It's located roughly 2 miles east of the village of Shanagolden, in the townland of Old Abbey. Gee, can you tell where it got its name? One of the earliest recorded nunneries in Ireland, with its first official record being around 1298, it was built on land donated by John Fitzthomas, and has the typical layout for abbeys of its time, with a dining hall, cells, isolated meditation areas, and other rooms still able to be identified amongst the ruins today. During the 15th century, there was a major battle for supremacy in the area between the Earl Fitzgerald and the prestigious Butler family, of which the Earldom of Ormond belonged. It got to such an extent that the local bishop was known to pray for peace between the families at masses. During one of the nightly attacks, Earl Fitzgerald attempted to get his wife to safety, but as he was pulling her onto his horse, an arrow pierced her thigh, shattering the bone and spraying red bodily fluids. As he rode on, the Countess appeared to have succumbed to her injury, leading the Earl to seek sanctuary at St. Catherine's. The heartbroken man was certain his wife had passed, so he swiftly buried her beneath the altar and continued elsewhere to find safety. As the night went on, the nuns and residents began to hear hair-raising screams and made the decision to rebury the Countess in hopes of bringing her peace. When they dug up the body, they discovered her fingers were broken and her nails had been torn off. The poor woman had been buried alive, with a very slow and torturous end of her life. To this day, it is believed that the Countess has been unable to find peace and continues to scream in anguish, waiting for her husband to save her from a fate truly worse than death. Moving slightly ahead in time, we come to the Black Nun herself. Described as one in the order that wasn't content with being humble, helping others over herself, and the servitude to God, she instead craved power. The hag had her own cell, where she worshipped Satan and performed black magic, becoming a slave to the occult. This was the highest form of blasphemy in the church, and the other nuns in the order fled the abbey, while the hag remained in her now house of darkness. To complete her rituals, the Black Nun would venture into the local community and perform depraved, lewd acts and offer sacrifices, with bones of young community members later discovered on the grounds. In modern times, visitors have reported seeing the dark, shadowy figure of a nun wandering, the feeling of being constantly watched, and a disembodied hand reaching towards them. It has been reported that flashlights cannot function in the nun's cell, and modern batteries drain too quickly to have any sort of rational explanation.
Number 3 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. This is a scary masterpiece, folks. Thrillist says, this impressive structure, allegedly the world's second largest hand-cut stone masonry building after the Kremlin, looks like it was designed as the set of a blockbuster thriller. Built around the Civil War era, the asylum was designed to house around 250 patients, but ended up holding more than 2,400, including for a brief period, the infamous Charles Manson. That's the opposite of a celebrity endorsement. Along with severe overcrowding, profound abuse abounded. People were locked in cages, lobotomized with ice picks, chained to things, and the combination led to hundreds of deaths and a palpable air of suffering. Apparitions are aplenty, like the still deranged patient Ruth, who likes to attack visitors. And since the asylum was also briefly a Civil War military base, uniformed soldier ghosts roam the halls. Thousands have claimed to hear voices telling them to get out. Civil War themed ghost tours, tours of the medical center, forensic buildings and geriatrics buildings, and zombie events and balls fully play up the twisted history on the campus grounds. Now, don't get me wrong, would it be really fun to be part of a zombie event at this place? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also not trying to get attacked by Ruth, the deranged ghost patient. Whenever people travel to a place like this, there is a risk involved. I personally am not willing to take the risk based on the history that this place has seen. Comment down below if you would. Number 2 on this list is Danvers Lunatic Asylum. This asylum hosted a very select group, criminals. Thrillist says, part prison, part asylum, all terror. This gothic monolith opened in 1878 to house mentally unstable criminals. Thanks to the addition of the mentally handicapped, alcoholics, and plain old felons, it became so severely understaffed by the 1930s that patients' deaths were often not discovered until days later, when they were found rotting in some forgotten corner. Shock therapy and lobotomies were standard procedures. In fact, some called Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. But a large cemetery on site said to be haunted by evil spirits suggests these were not always successful. The sinister castle-like building is said to have inspired H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanitarium, and so also Batman's Arkham Asylum, and was the setting of demon movie Session 9. And as if that weren't enough, Danvers used to be Salem Village. Yeah, of Salem witch trials fame. Regular ghosts are one thing, witch ghosts are another one altogether. Think about how few people would have had to work here, where a literal patient would die and wouldn't be discovered until days later. And also think about what that would have meant for the actual patients. That means that even if you were still alive, you probably wouldn't be treated or seen by a professional for days at a time. Which also means that you might not eat for days at a time either, and be stuck in what I can only assume would have been a cell by yourself for that entire time. This would have been a horrible place to go, even if it was just for criminals. Because of all of this, it is now deeply haunted and a place I highly recommend avoiding. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This is an asylum that I've talked about a few times on this channel before, which speaks to how haunted it actually is. Thrillist says, with an alleged 63,000 deaths taking place inside its walls, this place is up to its eyeballs in spirits, not surprisingly topping lists of America's most haunted spots. Originally built as a tuberculosis hospital in 1910, the building saw many die from the disease, but tales of mistreatment and dubious human experimentation trickled out, and patients left the premises in what was known as the death tunnel or body chute. Apparitions including Timmy, a boy who likes to play with rubber balls who's been caught on tape, the nurse who hanged herself in room 502, another nurse who fell from the same room's window, and scattered screams and footsteps have all been seen. 63,000 deaths. And here we were thinking that the 9,000 in the other place was bad, here's 63,000 more. Any place that has a death tunnel and a body chute, that should not be a place meant for rehabilitation and seeking help. We are talking about some sick stuff that went on here. I would get into some of the rumors associated with the human experimentation, but I honestly don't think that YouTube would let this video stay up if I did. There are a plethora of ghostly spirits that haunt this place now. Dark spirits that have lost all sense of humanity and are more demon than spirit. This is a spot that must be avoided at all costs.